Good day, everyone, and welcome to this episode from Shipping and Freight Resource. Today, I'm pleased to have the CEO and co-founder of ODeX, Liji and the co-founder and COO of ODeX, Binai Topel. Good day, Liji and Binai. Welcome to this episode.
Thanks, Harish. Pleasure being here again, and always look forward to speaking with you.
Right. So I think I wanted to start with a few questions about your latest development with PayPal. Can you give a brief about the PayPal solution that you have introduced in the USA? Because PayPal is well known for other payment options like e-commerce and stuff, but with shipping, I think this is very new, especially in the USA. Could you explain more on that, please?
So, for us, it was a revelation that while PayPal is known for their retail solutions, they also have business to business solutions. And when we were in the United States, we saw there were three major problems that needed to be solved. The first is that ACH, which is the bank transfer, takes sometimes a really long time. And if the truck is waiting outside, you could incur other costs. The second, that the standard credit card payment rails or the systems that are now available can be really, really expensive. Coming from Middle East, Africa, and India, the kind of cost that we saw was for us out of the roof, and uh, it seemed uh, uh, it seemed really strange that customers had to pay this amount of cost to move their box, and the amount of cost was only to the payment service provider. And the third one, and the most important one, was for us, PayPal represents 56 to 60% of all American payment transactions. And what we know of PayPal was that 80 plus percent of Americans would have PayPal as an app on their phone. So the question was that if this could work in retail, why the hell could this not work in B2B? That's where we approached PayPal. It's been a great partnership because they understood the problem and they also did work with us on providing a solution to the shipping industry. It is early stages, but we see that it's started taking off. Ben, I would have a little more details on the uh, solution side of how we have implemented it and why we have implemented it in a certain way. But happy to now hand this over to Binay and maybe elaborate a little more on PayPal.
So Harish, our take on PayPal is that everybody has it on their phone, so it is simple to use. What we initially were looking at targeting, or what we felt there would be a great need, is where there is an urgency to reconcile the payment with the carrier. So today, like Liji mentioned, other modes of payment takes from 30 minutes to 48 hours to reconcile. So with the PayPal payment method, we could probably crunch it down into a few seconds. So that was one of the motivation for us to bring on PayPal. And we have seen we have seen success of similar payment methods in other parts of the world where we work. Like, for example, UAE, almost 20% by in terms of transaction volumes come via similar methods. So we said that why not in the US? And the solutions that PayPal offers. So what we've currently launched is a card-based or a PayPal wallet-based payment. But what's also in the works is to be able to expand this to their entire suite of payments, which also includes ACH payments that PayPal can handle very seamlessly. One of the factors that Liji mentioned was, of course, the cost. When we talk about the cost, surprisingly, the cost of payments in the US is much higher than the cost of payments in the rest of the world, and the speed is slower. So it kind of looks like you get hit from both sides kind of a situation. So that's why we said that let's launch this. The acceptance from the industry has been great. It's people. So before even we announced PayPal going live, we just had it up on our site, and somebody already made a payment. So I think that was the best validation that something like this is much needed. And we were like, okay, the press release and the official announcement, we are going to click the send button now, and we see the dashboard, and we already have a payment. So I think it's something that the market was waiting, and we've seen that the US market is also rapidly changing. So I'm expecting more and more adoption of faster payment methods in the US.
Great to hear that. So this is also impacting or will help some of the truckers, because obviously USA is known for a lot of problems with demurrage and detention, especially, and I've read a lot, and I've interviewed also people on this aspect, and truckers are being affected directly as well. Can you touch a little bit on that and how
Absolutely.
this solution will help?
So what happens is that when the trucker has to make the payment, so what we see generally is that the trucker has very minimal information. They probably just have the invoice from the carrier, and they need to pay this and to get the box out or to get the box in, one of those scenarios. And to ask the trucker to make a bank transfer or log on to the carrier's website, register there, and jump through a lot of hoops to make a payment just to get the box out. So that seemed a little bit too much to ask the trucker to do. And what used to happen is that the trucker is waiting, and then the back office team of the trucking company is the one who's actually then doing all this coordination and jumping through the hoops. So in order to get the box out on time or in on time, the trucking company's team had to do a lot of coordination between multiple parties. Whereas now we say that, whereas it could have been very simple that I have an invoice, I need to make a payment. And once I make a payment and it is confirmed, I will get my box. So we have cut that down by doing this, where we say that a trucker can come to the ODeX website. He has an invoice. He can punch in the invoice and the amount, and then we do a quick validation whether this is actually the invoice that you're trying to pay and whether the amount is correct. And then we give them the option of paying via PayPal. You don't need to jump through a lot of hoops to be able to do this. What it does is that it cuts down the coordination of trying to connect with either the forwarder or the agent or the cargo owner, get some more information, go to the shipping line's website or even ODeX website, log in. A lot of these steps are eliminated. So essentially, you can pretty much pay on the go. So everybody used to promise pay on the go, but then when you actually go and try to do it, it was not really pay on the go. So here we are going that step and say that pay on the go, get your confirmation and get your box out. And like we rightly estimated, the very first payment came from a trucker, and the trucking company was now located in the hinterlands, that it was even difficult for our team to get in touch with them. They were not so easily accessible, but we were really surprised that they were the first ones to make a payment. And that's where we realized that for the truckers who crisscross the country, who go all the way in, and the offices are thinly staffed, we are offering a truly pay as you go kind of a solution. So that's been the advantage for the truckers. So today the whole planning time. So I watch a few of these vlogs that these truckers make. There's a couple of guys that I diligently follow, the US, because it shows a lot of the country. And I see the delays that they face at each point, be it border control, be it at the waiting outside the warehouse because of certain things or waiting outside the port. And I see that at each of these touch points, if we are able to cut down the payment waiting time, or the time it takes to confirm the payment, I think that will shave off a few hours of waiting time at each of these locations. So that's what we are attempting to do. The first attempt is with the carrier, and let's see, hopefully we will have further industry collaborators to take this forward across the value chain.
Right. So, Liji, are there any plans to expand this integration to other documentation along with PayPal, like for truckers, their trucking documents, which may not be happening right now? And also, is this Is this solution unique to USA? Obviously, they are the largest users, I presume, of PayPal. But other than that, is there any plans to integrate with other countries?
I'll answer the second one first, actually. I mean, because we know in the US that this really works. Now, our plans are that in any large market that we go live, we also go live with PayPal. So, on the anvil now is Hong Kong and a couple of other large countries in the East, which have presence of PayPal, and we would like to go live with PayPal. And not just PayPal, similar solutions. So it depends on the country. Like for example, if I'm looking at an India, we already are live with Razorpay, which is one of the largest. In the UAE, we work with actually quite a few providers who provide these kind of options. So the idea is that PayPal is a great solution to have, but we need to build on those rails and offer it to every country that we are live in. The second one, whether we intend to extend it to tracking documents, I would hope so, not immediately, but sometime maybe very soon. We should look at those because when, and this is something that we learned in North America, and we are very grateful to the US market, is that when you actually reach a large country, the terminology itself changes because in our part of the world, a carrier is an ocean carrier. In North America, a carrier is a trucking company. And that says a
Absolutely.
lot about the importance of trucking companies and trucking in a continent. And for us as a solution provider, um, it's very imperative that we try and address the entire value chain. So definitely, and we would like to think that we would like to address the needs of carriers across the globe. So somewhere trucking comes into that.
Absolutely, because trucking documentation is also another problematic area in the States, especially because there's a lot of documentation involved in that. So, Binay, this you mentioned previously about speed of transaction. Um, this ODeX is integrating with the other companies' existing payment infrastructure. Has that helped to speed up by a lot? Or what percentage, or what would you estimate it at?
From uh, I would say that in terms of the speed of payments, I would say we have been able to bring it down from, we have seen payments which don't get reconciled for 48 hours or more, 72 hours and so on. So I would say that on an average, on a working day, during working hours, the average for an ocean carrier to reconcile payments would be somewhere in the 4 to 6 hour range is what we look at. And we are attempting that we should be able to bring this down under 30 minutes is what we, on including all payment methods when we
Wow.
talk about. So that's the attempt. And we see that in terms of something like a PayPal can be instant, something like even an ACH payment, we potentially can bring it down to under 30 minutes is what we look at. Why we are uh, confident that this is something which is possible and which can be achieved is because this is how it happens in a lot of parts of the world that we work in, especially when we look at Africa. We see that the kind of payment methods and the kind of speed of transaction that exists in Africa is phenomenal. And US being a large country and complexities, uh, the implementation takes a little bit longer, but I think it's very much achievable. What we see is that there's a gap between cutting edge payment technology and where our industry is. So we need to try and bridge this gap, bring these uh, we are trying to act as a catalyst which will be able to adapt these cutting edge fast payment technologies to the needs of the industry. So that's where we see our role evolving, where we are able to, like for example, the question that you asked, PayPal is so common but it's never used in shipping. Why? So I think that's the catalyst, or that's the bridge that we are trying to be, so to bring these payment providers into our industry and make the whole transaction process faster. And I see that as we as we add more, so the next in the PayPal journey would be to enable Venmo, because Venmo is also part of the PayPal family. And we see even bank transfers, like for example, one of the things in our pipeline would be Zelle payments, because Zelle is something which is almost instant, and there is an option for Zelle Business. It would be smaller payments, but then there is an option for Zelle Business, and it's nearly 100% automated experience can be used. But then we don't see anybody in the industry using Zelle currently. So we would like to attempt to bring a few of these, which are currently on our pipeline, to be able to crunch this time and say, and this should work 24 hours. It should not be only during office hours, This should be 24/7 over the weekends. If you make a payment under 30 minutes, you should get a confirmation. So that's our, I would say, goal, vision, dream, you can call it maybe even. But I think it's possible, and we are working towards that. And the industry also has been quite supportive. I feel the other side, the customer side of it, is waiting for tools like this to make their life easier.
Impressive. Almost real-time reconciliation. Nice.
Yeah.
Thanks for that explanation. So moving on, we also have a family dynamic here, being a brother-sister duo. I think one of the few in the industry in this space. So what was the genesis of ODeX? How did this idea come about?
So we already were working on another software solutions company. This was 2009 when I founded, along with Binai, another software solutions company. But what really happened was that 2003, I was on a baby break and Binay was at Infosys. And he has the credit of setting me on entrepreneurship as a journey, because he was in Bangalore, I was in Mumbai. And I would call him and give him all kinds of crazy ideas and say that, oh, you know what, I think we should do this. And you know what, we should do that. So one fine day, he turned back and he told me that if you can sell a rose for 5 rupees to 10 people, I'm in. But you need to do this first. So the very first venture that Binay inspired me to start is a venture called Everyday Roses. Failed miserably. Um, I mean, you can't imagine the scale of failure that we had, but it was fun doing it. And what we learned is that an idea is great, execution is the key. It was a great learning for both of us. Um, he was at that point of time the inspiration behind what we were doing. I decided I will not go back on entrepreneurship, take it up and see what more could be delivered. In 2009, we founded a software solutions company together. What we landed up was attempting to build a great ERP for some of the large LSPs in India. Uh, and when I say great, because we were competing with the likes of SAP. And since Binay came in from SAP, with his love for SAP, it was also it's also a great journey, because we saw that sometimes in this industry, a large ERP like an SAP or a well accepted ERP like an SAP doesn't really work. But what we also learned was that there was this huge gap between where we came from. So I came from consulting and market research. Vinay came from technology, and we had a couple of co-founders then. So where we came from to where the industry was, where we came from, it seemed almost impossible to imagine a scenario where there was paper being moved from desk to desks and offices to offices. It was all email, or you had self-service portal, employee portals. You also tended to use third-party portals, and we were really surprised at how this industry worked. Somebody was sending 3 copies of one particular document, one to the shipping lines office, one to the ports office, one somewhere else, and then sending money or cash. And this was time in India when cash was being used. So we started asking a lot of questions. Thankfully, nobody told us that we were idiots and told us off. So they were kind enough to sit down and explain, see, this is how the industry works. We said maybe there is another way. So in 2014, finally, we launched the first version of ODeX, which was two solutions. One was a port gate pass solution, and the second was an e-invoicing solution. And then we've never looked back from there.
Rest is history,
Binay
I
maybe has a
think.
different take. Yeah, Binay maybe has a different take, but then yeah.
So does the family dynamics help make things better, Binay, and working together?
So I think Liji is very kind and for giving me some credit on, or rather putting the blame on me for her entrepreneurship journey. Should I say it that way? Uh, so I would be candid, Harish. It is not easy because the point is that sometimes uh, sometimes it is better that you know a person professionally well and may not really the personal side doesn't bother you much, it's what it is, you leave it at that. But then when you are siblings who have grown up together and she has seen me from the time I was born, it is very difficult to disconnect the professional and personal. Uh, so that is, I think that's one of the learnings that we have had over the past 15 years, 16 years that we've been working together. So that was, I would also attribute that as our strength, because when you know that when you know a person so well and you work with that person, then you also end up giving the person space in both our cases, in whether it be me or whether it be Liji, that the space to say that, okay, I understand how this person works and I understand that this person probably needs a little bit more time. So for if we were to look at how both of us are as people, I take more time I would like to, uh, do it at a certain pace. Liji would like it at a faster pace sometimes. But I have the luxury of being afforded that space by Liji. So that's a big thing. And uh, getting that space to execute something while she holds off the pressures from all the external forces, be it customers, be it partners, I think that is something that contributes greatly to our success. So that's where, and at the same time, she has the assurance that I'm on the job and I will get it done. And I don't need to worry that she will, she will uh, put pressure and try to make things work and bring in the external pressure into the internal teams. So I think that's something that we have. It has evolved, and I think it's a beautiful working relationship that we have now. Um, to be honest, we used to fight like cats and dogs at the beginning of our of our journey, because from a personality perspective, we both are completely, I would say, 180 degrees poles apart. But I think what has happened is uh, I would credit a lot of it to the industry, because the industry has also made us more humble and say that you know. You should always look at the way the ship moves. It moves slowly, but it gets the job done. It doesn't happen overnight. It is not a Concorde that it can cross the pond in 2 hours. But at the same time, it's stable, and it is what moves the world. So I think we uh, that industries pace, or the whole concept of the industry has somehow got ingrained in our personalities now, so where we are able to uh, not be shaken so easily. So that's been, I think, the evolving point of the brother sister equation. But apart from that, I think it's fantastic. We were just having a conversation the other day. I said that, Liji, I have a problem. I don't think that I can ever work with somebody else. So it's either you as a co-founder or I would just hang up my boots and probably just retire and take it easy. A beer on the beach is what I would opt for. So yeah, so I think it's come to that now.
That's a good problem to have. But I see you both have worked out a good formula to work together. That is very nice to hear, and I'm sure that is contributing to your success as well. Um, so, in terms of expansion plans, what new markets are you planning to expand next, and which are some of the key areas there?
One, definitely, and I heard someone say this, is the sun is rising in Africa today. For us, Africa continues to be a key focus area. We've been there since 2016, but the growth has happened rapidly only over the last 2 years. So while we've been there in the West, in Nigeria, in Ghana, in Senegal, we are now in the East. We are in Kenya. We will very soon be live in Uganda, Rwanda, and also Tanzania. And key markets like Mozambique are part of our delivery pipeline for the next year. But Tanzania, Kenya, Rwanda, Uganda will be this year. And in fact, Kenya is already live. We have two carriers working with us in Kenya. South Africa is another major market, Harish, and it's taken time in South Africa. Tough country, I must say, but we've been happy being there because reminds us a lot of home and how things work. But I am hopeful that now, end of this year, we'll see more expansion in South Africa. And also, in terms of the East, which is Far East, we are already in Singapore, Malaysia. We are looking at Hong Kong now to go live, and also next year, Vietnam. And not to forget North America. Once we are in the USA, Canada cannot be too far. Um, though Prime Minister Trudeau might not want us in, it's still it still is a great market to be in, and it's something that we hope to be live by January 2025. So quite a few coming up, actually.
So if I may come in on that, Harish, so what we are looking at is that in each of these regions, we have a foothold with a couple of countries. And what we are essentially doing is, so these were our learning blocks, I would say, in that region, and to understand how the region works, how the customers are, what is the expectation, what are the problem statements. Because when we look at rolling out ODeX, at a very high level, the problem statement remains the same. But when we actually get down to the ground level, there are nuances to the problem statement, and that's the make or break for the system, because to be able to really connect to the ground level customer. We have been, so Africa, like Liji mentioned, I think we see a big difference between the East and the West. In terms of the way the industry works, in terms of the way the customers are, the governments are. So while West was the first foothold that we got in, East is where we are slowly now starting our journey since last year. And that's why you see a lot of expansion on the East in the countries that you mentioned. And when we look at the Far East, Singapore was the first one. Obviously, I would look at Singapore as the gateway. And then Malaysia was the next. And we are attempting Hong Kong, and hoping that we might learn a few things new over there. And I'm pretty excited about the expansion to Hong Kong, because that's I think, even though when we look at today's world, we see Hong Kong and China being somewhat together. So we're looking at going to Hong Kong first and seeing how what it holds for us. And we have a few good partners also over there. We work closely with GSBN now, and GSBN being Hong Kong based, we hope that we can have some close collaborations over there. So that's how we are looking at things from a regional expansion perspective. And North America, because of the US story, I think Canada is something which is which is a natural extension, I would say, of US implementation. So that's how we are looking at things.
Great, great. Nice to hear this expansion plan. So speaking about all these expansion plans, Binay, how do you overcome the regulatory and technological challenges in these markets? Because I would assume, as you mentioned earlier, West Africa and East Africa are different, North America is different, and each has its own regulations and challenges. How does that work with ODeX? How do you handle that?
So when we look at our implementation usually, so what helps us? I will start with what helps us, and then I will talk about what are the impediments of or the challenges of entering any new market. So what helps us is that since we work with carriers and we have been working with ocean carriers for quite some time, when we go to a new market, for us, the integration into the ocean carrier system already exists. So which means that when I open up Uganda, it is for a PIL or for a hapagloid. It is just that they need to just now start sending us the data or the files or for the API calls for this country. So that's the very first step that is usually a big challenge when we enter a new country, and it starts with that. So which means that even before we enter a country, we have a good idea of the customer base over there and what sort of customers and what sort of processes exist. The second part is to be able to have a pre-information checklist or a pre-information visit, which gives us an idea of what are the challenges, what are the differences from the other market. If you look at what ODeX does, we generally stick to interactions between customers and carriers and customers and port terminals at the max, and we usually stay away from any government related filing. For example, we don't do the custom duty payment or we don't do the custom documentation. So that's something which means that we probably do not have to jump through the hoops of the local compliance on the governmental aspects. What comes across is how the customer of a market is unique. So for that, then the next step is to be able to do workshops. There is no easy way to do it. We have tried many things, be it online video tutorials and outreach programs, etc. But I am a firm believer that there's no substitute to actually meeting the customer. So that's something, and the customer teaches you what their problems are, and which usually are a lot of times quite different from the problems that the carrier faces. So that's the biggest learning for us, and that's where the real feedback or the input comes in. So first step, what we do is that we do a small pilot with a few set of customers, and this pilot usually involves all types and sizes of customers. So it is not just the large customers who have high volumes who are invited for this pilot. We also invite the ones who probably interact with the carrier only once a month. And this is a very, very important exercise because the pilot actually ends with a go, no go decision, which means that we will actually take a decision that after the pilot, we would say that, hey, maybe we are not yet ready. We need another couple of months to tweak our systems to make it ready or build a few integrations to be able to enter this market. And at the end of the pilot, we have a joint discussion with the carriers, with all our stakeholders, and say, this is our feedback from the market. It sounds very laborious, to be honest, now, but then I think at some level we have kind of achieved a certain standardization in this process, which helps us to be able to go to new markets faster now. So in the beginning, like maybe 7-8 years back, it was painful. Like each discussion required involvement from me, from Liji, from our senior tech guys, etc. But today, this is more or less streamlined, and we have a formula of how to be able to replicate this. So that's where it has helped. On the compliance perspective, we have a very strong legal team which checks all the regulatory compliances before we jump into it. So this coincides with the pilot phase, and we make sure that we are pretty much compliant to any local requirements that are there. And from a payment space, so one of the strongest compliances that comes in is in the payments space. So what our strategy has been is to be able to partner with banks or existing fintechs or financial institutions, and restrict ourselves to a large extent to be a technology integrator. At the same time, we bring them on board the platform in a way that the offerings of these partners are available to the customer. So the best example is a PayPal story. So if you see, we have PayPal, but essentially what we are acting as is we are acting as a connection between PayPal and Hapagloid. We are not exactly playing the role of a payment gateway. So this is a model that we see has a lot of value, where any financial institution or a payment gateway can plug into us. And for region Africa, I think the banks have been one of the biggest supporters. The banks in Africa are super agile. They are very receptive to new ideas. They're able to tweak their systems faster to be able to cater to all these integrations. And that's one of our uh, pillars of success in Africa, I would say, that the banks have been super supportive. So this is usually how our journey moves, that once we identify a country or a carrier reaches out to us and says, that ocean carrier reaches out to us and says, can you implement ODeX in this country? Then we do so usually this whole timeline is between, say, anywhere from 4 to 24 weeks, depending on the size of the country. So it can be as short as 4 weeks, because if I look at, say, in Uganda, I can potentially look at it from a 4 to 6 weeks, because we went live in Kenya first. And we know that the Uganda market is predominantly cargo coming in via Kenya, and the market is smaller. So we are able to look at a 4 to 6 weeks timeline for Uganda. But for larger markets, it's minimum 24 weeks that we have to start all the prep, be able to bring everybody together, reach out to a certain critical mass of customers to announce that we're going to do this, and then actually do the handholding. And one of the biggest things in the implementation rollout is also the post-go live support. That's very, very critical, because that's also where you make or break the whole implementation. Because if the customers, because this is a change for the customer, and if the customers don't find enough support, and this is where we look at having local support, which means that if today we have somebody who has been in the shipping industry in Kenya, and he has been working. He started his career in the shipping industry in Kenya, working with various agencies, and he's our main guy in Kenya. So having somebody like that, who the industry knows and can reach out easily, understands their problems, is very critical in post-go live support phase. That's been, I would say, a flavor of how we go about implementing ODeX in multiple countries.
So I just actually wanted to give a perspective on what it really means. When Binay said that we have to go into a country and learn that, and so there are two things that we definitely do in terms of statutory requirements. The one is manifestation. Second is assistance with fiscal invoicing in countries where it is mandatory, because that's the core of what ODeX does. But to kind of give you a flavor of what really happens when we talk about local nuances, there is something called as a police hold in Nigeria, which we have not seen even in any other African country, which is essentially that before the shipping line releases a container, they need to check if the container is on the list that has been sent to them by the local police. This was a cumbersome job for the carrier, but forget cumbersome. This was a job that if someone failed at the operational level, it could mean that the CEO of that country could spend a few hours with the police of the country. So that's how risky it could get. We actually landed up building a solution for that. Now, when we go to a place like Kenya, we figure out, when I spoke about the customer side, not the carrier side, we figure out that in terms of KYC, that the Kenyan customers were submitting, they had a certain process. And when we go in with our process, sometimes it's a little bit disconnected from the standard global process. So we landed up tweaking that, tweaking our configurations a bit. And this happens in every country. So the importance of being present locally, speaking to carriers or terminals, uh, BCOs, forwarders, it cannot be stressed enough, and that's something that we do on a daily basis. So yes, like you rightly said, it's boilerplate and it's there, but because we have a template now we know that okay, you need to tick off these boxes. But every country can surprise you, and that's also the fun of doing ODeX. And it's not the same. It's not like, oh, do you want to go live in Malawi tomorrow? I'm going to switch it on. It does not work. We will still say that, and we will insist that we want to be there. So
Absolutely. It's not a
it
complete
is.
plug and play, but customization is required everywhere. So, Liji, speaking about the expansion into these countries, what impact do you expect to happen with the implementation of ODeX? How do you think it's going to impact the local shipping services?
I'll actually give you an example. Country in East Africa, we went live, or rather, we went live with a pilot, and our team left the customer's office at 5:30, and we get a message from the customer at 7:45 saying that he has applied for all his permits and releases, and he sends us a screenshot saying that he got it at 8 p.m. in the evening, and he's expecting the container to move out. And he was like, "Thank you guys, why weren't you here earlier? This would have taken me anywhere till tomorrow morning 11 a.m. and on worst case would have been 6 p.m. tomorrow evening." Um, and that's the stories that we actually live for. So the impact is that the turnaround time for cargo release can come down from um, 24 hours or even 4 hours to less than 2 hours in a lot of cases, if the payments are reconciled very, very well. And of course, if the customer has their documents in order, which is usually 60% of the cases. And this is where the biggest impact is, whether it is on the time spent by the customer service of a forwarder or a custom broker, whether it is a BCO waiting for his container to be delivered. The biggest impact has been in the reduction in turnaround times. And I think the second biggest one has been that nobody is crowding the counters of shipping line offices today. So if you look at Kenya PIL, counter footfalls have reduced by 80%, which is true of Hapag-Lloyd in PIL, Hapag-Lloyd in Ghana. PIL in Ghana, I think it's come down by more than 95%. That's the kind of numbers that we look at, that where you would see at least 150 people turn up at your counter. Today, you see less than 20 people, 30 people coming to your counter, which means that the counter staff has more time to actually do what they were supposed to do, which is to check these documents and ensure that you're releasing the cargo to the right person. And they're not spending their time sitting at a counter and explaining stuff. So that's been a lot of impact. For the customer also, it's a big impact because they're no longer traveling to a counter just to have a heated conversation. So and and I remember a friend today tell us this, that today, if a customer walks into my office, I know that he's most likely to be irate, and I know that the right thing to do would be to offer him a cup of coffee and a cookie so that we can really solve the problem, rather than deal with a whole host of people who have to turn up because we told them that is the way to do it. So I think that's been the stories that we hear across every country that we go to.
That's pretty impressive. A 15-minute turnaround time is quite something. And yes, I'm pretty sure along with the push for electronic trade documentation, this
Yes.
digital interaction also helps customers quite a bit. And just to wrap up, are there any specific milestones or partnerships that have been important or pivotal to ODeX's recent expansion efforts in, say, Malaysia or Kenya, those kind of places?
Definitely. Hapag-Lloyd has been, of course, the one that's, if we say, moving the ship along for us. They have taken us, they've put the faith in us to deliver in a lot of these countries, followed by PIL. In Africa, there is Grimaldi. And of course, we are looking at all the major carriers in India. So, be it MSC, CMA, Maersk, all of them have reposed their faith in us. So we owe a lot to the ocean carriers to have believed that we can deliver the solutions. But one major partner for us has been banks. So DBS in India showed us how things can be done and showed us how, if a financial institution decides that there is a problem worth solving and decides to solve it, what kind of solutions are possible. So we have actually taken that template and reached out to an EcoBank, a Zenith Bank, Access, in Tanzania, CRDB, and we found receptive banks. So two stakeholders, financial institutions and ocean carriers. ODeX would not have been successful without these two partners. That's been a major one. Another partnership that Binay is really excited about and has been pushing is GSBN. It is because you just spoke about electronic documentation, and it's a key. Binay, you want to speak about how exciting GSBN was when they reached out? That was
Yeah, you know how excited I am about electronic trade documentation, and then GSBN, of course, is one of the big names in that arena. How do you see that partnership, Binay?
So we are stitching up a pilot with GSBN with a particular a use case that we identified. So we have been in talks with them for, I think, close to 6 months now, and we have identified one use case that we can potentially work on and kickstart. So I think we're still kind of in a little bit. We are still not yet there in terms of being able to announce a solution yet. But what we see is great synergies, because what they're trying to do, and there is a lot of overlap in terms of what we can potentially achieve together. And one of the most exciting things is we were disappointed. Sorry, I'm just digressing a little bit. We were disappointed when TradeLens decided to shut shop, because they were the poster boys of blockchain implementation. And any technologist that I speak to outside of shipping, they say that, you guys are the best use case for blockchain. So why isn't there a blockchain use case in your industry? And I tell them, we had one, which was the largest blockchain implementation in the world, and it shut down, unfortunately. So with GSBN, I see that they have already achieved a certain level of success in China, and we see, and I think there's a marriage of mindsets as well in terms of how we are looking at implementation. And I'm very, very hopeful that GSBN will be able to finally bring blockchain in a very, very usable way to the industry, and this will get adopted. So that's the most exciting part for me from a pure technology perspective that I'm looking at. And I'm pretty sure that the first use case that we plan to launch with GSBN and ODeX together, that should give us an idea of how the industry reacts to it, and what kind of changes are required to be able to do it. So I would say that for us, why the GSBN partnership is one of the most important ones that we are working on right now, because it's a no-brainer, and it's taken far too long. It's high time that it happens, so that we start using blockchain, and so many of the other documentation becomes easier in that case. Now, not just the electronic BL, but then a whole bunch of local documents that are submitted at the load port, destination port. All of them can be brought on this, and once the banks start coming on this platform, the kind of kind of information that is available and the quality of information that is available to the banks, it opens up a whole new aspect of business financing, so many things that can be done and out of it. So that's why we see that uh, yes, it's a good step towards the future, I would say, GSP. And so that's exciting. Hopefully, I think in the next 1.5 months, we should be able to talk about it, Harish, to you, give you a brief of what exactly we are trying to do as our pilot, and maybe make a short presentation to you and say that this is
Yes,
what
with
we.
a good follow-up to this.
Absolutely,
Well,
absolutely.
it's always a pleasure having you on my channel, Liji and Binai. Thank you very much. And from my side, I wish ODeX all the very best in your expansion plans. I know it's a great product, and all the best in conquering the rest of the world. And thank you for your time today.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you,
Harish.
Harish.
Always an honor.
Always a
Yeah.
pleasure.
Thank
Thank
you.
you.